Öndör Gegeen Zanabazar, born Eshidorji, was the 16th Jebtsundamba Khutuktu reincarnation of Jebtsundamba and the first Bogd Gegeen, or supreme spiritual authority, of the Gelugpa lineage of Tibetan Buddhism in Mongolia. The son of a Mongol Tüsheet Khan, Zanabazar was declared spiritual leader of Khalkha Mongols by a convocation of nobles in 1639 when he was just 4 years old. The fifth Dalai Lama later recognized him as the reincarnation of the Buddhist scholar Taranatha and bestowed on him the Sanskrit name Jñānavajra, meaning thunderbolt of wisdom. Over the course of nearly 60 years, Zanabazar advanced the Gelugpa school of Buddhism among the Mongols, supplanting a synthesizing Sakya or Red Hat Buddhist traditions that had prevailed in the area, while strongly influencing social and political developments in 17th-century Mongolia. His close ties with both Khalkha Mongol leaders and the devout Kangxi emperor facilitated the Khalkha's submission to king rule in 1691. In addition to his spiritual and political roles, Zanabazar was a polymath, a prodigious sculptor, painter, architect, poet, costume designer, scholar, and linguist, who is credited with launching Mongolia's 17th-century cultural renaissance. He is best known for his intricate and elegant Buddhist sculptures created in the Nepali-derived style, two of the most famous being the White Tara and Vajradhara, sculpted in the 1680s. To facilitate translation of sacred Tibetan texts, he created the Soyombo script, from which sprang the Soyombo that later became a national symbol of Mongolia. Zanabazar used his artistic output to promote Buddhism among all levels of Khalkha society and unify Khalkha Mongol tribes during a time of social and political turmoil. Early life 1635 to 1651. Zanabazar was born in 1635 in present-day Yesonswil, Overkhamgai, Mongolia. Named Eshidorji at birth, he was the second son of the Tüsheet Khan Gombadorj and his wife, Kandojamtso. Gombadorj, one of 3 Khalkha Khans who could trace his lineage directly back to Genghis Khan, was the grandson of old.The Khan, who had first opened Mongol lands to the spread of Yellow Hat or Gelugpa Tibetan Buddhism. In 1578, old.The Khan bestowed the Mongolian language title Dalai Lama on the Gelugpa Sonam Gyatso. According to tradition, Zanabazar showed signs of advanced intelligence, linguistic abilities, and religious devotion from an early age. Miraculous occurrences allegedly occurred during his youth, and he was able to fully recite the Jambal Sunjod prayer at age 3. In 1639, an assembly of Khalkha nobles at Shirit Saganya recognized Zanabazar as an Öndör Gegeen. Although he was only 4 years old at the time, they declared him the Khalkha's supreme religious leader, proclaiming him he who brandishes the banner of the Sakya school and teacher of multitudes, and pledged their obedience. The designation of Zanabazar as the Khalkha's supreme religious leader strengthened ties between Khalkha aristocracy and Tibetan Buddhist hierarchy, gave Khalkha nobility added religious legitimacy, and served as a rallying point for Khalkha tribal leaders, who that same year had forged an uneasy alliance with Western-based Oirat Mongol tribes. Zanabazar established his religious center in 1647, a traveling gur camp known as the Monastery of the West, later renamed Shank Monastery. In 1649, Zanabazar was sent to Tibet to receive personal instruction from the 5th Dalai Lama and the 4th Panchen Lama at Drepung Monastery. The Dalai Lama identified him as the reincarnation of the scholar Taranatha, who had led the rival Jonang school of Tibetan Buddhism until his death in Mongolia 1 year before Zanabazar's birth. Taranatha was believed to be the 15th reincarnation of Jebtsundamba. Thus Zanabazar was recognized as the 16th reincarnation and thereafter referred to as the Jebtsundamba Khutuktu. The Tibetan Buddhist hierarchy also granted him the additional title Bogd Gegeen, or highest enlightened saint, designating him the top-ranking Lama in Mongolia. Spiritual and temporal leadership 1651 to 1686. Following his journeys to Tibet in 1651 and again in 1656, Zanabazar and his retinue of Tibetan lamas founded a series of Gelug-influenced monasteries, temples, and Buddhist shrines throughout Mongol territory, the most noteworthy being a stupa to house Taranatha's remains, the Sarjian monastery in the Khanty Mountains, and several movable temples which contained paintings, sculptures, wall hangings and ritual objects influenced by the Tibetan Nepalese style and either imported from Tibet or produced by Zanabazar or his students. By the late 1650s, Zanabazar further solidified his spiritual and political authority over Khalkha tribal leaders. The gurs he received as gifts from Khalkha nobles upon his election in 1639 became his orgu, his ambulatory palatial residence, known as the Shira Bazanord, later called Urga by the Russians and Arkure or Ikh by Mongols. It eventually became the Mongolian capital Ulaanbaatar. Zanabazar established 7 amags to oversee his religious institutions: the Department of the Treasury, Department of Administration, Department of Meals, Department of the Honored Doctor, Department of Amdu, Department of Orlog and the Department of Kuakan no Yon. His authority was further substantiated in 1658 when he presided over a convocation of nobles at Erdin-Zuu, and a year later he conferred titles on nobles at old.The at Sagan. Nevertheless, despite being recognized as the undisputed spiritual leader of the Khalkha, Zanabazar's moral influence failed to overcome the Mongols' traditional tribalism, both among various Khalkha tribes as well as the rivalry between the Khalkha and Oirat-Dzunga Mongols to the west. Khalkha submission to king rule 1686 to 1691. Zanabazar attempted to pacify the Dzunga leader Gelugpa Tüsheet Khan with gifts of his artwork and sacred texts. In 1686 he attended a peace conference at the behest of the King Emperor Kangxi to reach a reconciliation with the Dzungas. Despite these efforts, skirmishes and vendettas soon led to all-out war between the Dzunga and the Khalkha, as Gelugpa's forces swept eastward into Khalkha territory in 1688. Zanabazar and nearly 20,000 Khalkha refugees fled south into present-day Inner Mongolia to seek the protection of the King Emperor. In pursuit, the Dzunga forces pillaged Erdin-Zuu and destroyed several monasteries built by Zanabazar. Under Zanabazar's authority, the 3 Khalkha rulers declared themselves king vassals at Dolanor in 1691, a politically decisive step that officially ended the last remnants of the Yuan dynasty and allowed the king to assume the mantle of the Genghis Khans, merging the Khalkha forces into the king army. Motivated by the appeals of Zanabazar, whom he greatly admired, as well as the threat posed by a strong, unified Mongol state under Dzunga rule, the Kangxi emperor dispatched king armies north to subdue the Gelugpa's forces. Over the next decade, from 1691 to 1701, as king armies battled the Dzungas for control of Mongolia, Zanabazar remained in China, wintering in Beijing and passing his summers with the Kangxi Emperor Jehol as his spiritual mentor. He returned to Khalkha Mongolia only once during this period in 1699 to attend the funeral of his elder brother Tüsheet Khan Shankar Öndör. Kangxi designated Zanabazar Dalai Lama, Great Lama, and invited him on his pilgrimage to Watishan in 1698. Under Zanabazar's tutelage, the intensity of the Kangxi Emperor's Buddhist devotion notably increased after 1701. In 1697, Qing forces decisively defeated Gildan at the Battle of Jñānavajra. At age 66, Zanabazar finally resettled in Khalkha, Mongolia in 1701 to supervise restoration of the old.The monastery, destroyed in 1688 by Gildan's troops. Over the next several years he oversaw the building of several more Buddhist monasteries in Mongolia while traveling to Beijing annually to meet with the King Emperor. The Kangxi Emperor died on December 20, 1722. Zanabazar immediately journeyed to Beijing to conduct Buddhist rites at Beijing's Yellow Monastery. Zanabazar died himself in Beijing only a few months later, on February 18, 1723. He was 88 years old. His body was embalmed, returned to Mongolia and mummified. Kangxi's son, the Yongzheng Emperor, ordered a Chinese-style monastery dedicated to Zanabazar's main tutelary deity Maitreya, to be built at the place where the Lama's traveling dark ura had stood at the moment of his death, pledging 100,000 liang of silver to the monastery's construction, which was not completed until a year after his own death in 1736. Amabayash Gorlan Monastery, or Monastery of Blessed Peace, resembles Yongzheng's own Yonghe Palace in Beijing. Zanabazar's body was finally laid to rest there in 1779. In 1937, Amabayas Kalan Monastery was ransacked by Mongolian communists. Zanabazar's remains were allegedly removed and burned in the hills nearby. Artistic works. At his height, Zanabazar was recognized as a sculptor par excellence among the Buddhist countries of Asia and the greatest sculptor of Mongolia, and is sometimes referred to as the Michelangelo of Asia, as he epitomized the Mongolian Renaissance. During his time in Tibet, Zanabazar came to admire the Nepalese style of representational arts favored by the Gelugpa school, and it profoundly influenced his own artistic development and style. Upon his return from Tibet in 1651 and 1656, he revived the art of metal image-making in Mongolia, through carved images of various Buddhist gods from bronze or copper. By the 1670s and 1680s, he and his workshop of apprentices at Tovkorn Monastery were producing hundreds of artistic pieces used to populate the many monasteries and temples he founded, and by extension were seen as vehicles to spread Buddhism beyond the confines of court circles to the lay masses. As his political influence grew, his artwork became a form of diplomacy, used in negotiations with the Dzunga leader Gelugpa Tüsheet Khan and to gain the favor of the Kangxi Emperor, paving the way for incorporation of Outer Mongolia into Qing Protectorate. The vast majority of Zanabazar's artistic output came between his return from his first trip to Tibet in 1651 and the defeat of Khalkha armies by the Dzunga Mongols in 1688. His greatest masterworks, including Vajradhara, Green Tara, White Tara 1685, 21 Taras, the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, Walking Maitreya and many others, were created in the mid-1680s at Tovkorn Monastery, his retreat outside of old.The, originally called Byazgalan to Glagoran. Zanabazar's works testify to his exceptional skill of depicting feminine beauty as well as his unique aesthetic vision of human physical perfection. His sculptures, portraying peaceful and contemplative female figures, are beautifully proportioned with facial features characterized by high foreheads, thin, arching eyebrows, high bridged noses, and small, fleshy lips. Especially beautiful are the faces of Zanabazar's Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in deep meditation, guided by a desire to liberate the people from wrath, ignorance, lust, contempt and ill will, the five vices giving rise to all sins. Zanabazar established unique features for Mongolian Buddhism, including Tibetan-influenced yet redesigned Lama robes, reworked melodies for chanting, and modifications of traditional ceremonies either in the melodies or by the introduction of new prayer texts which he composed. In 1686 he designed the Soyombo script to facilitate cross-translations between Mongolian, Tibetan, and Sanskrit. Today, the script is found mostly in historical texts and in religious and temple inscriptions. However, one special character of the script, the Soyombo symbol, later became a national symbol of Mongolia, and has appeared on the national flag since 1921, and on the emblem of Mongolia since 1960, as well as money, stamps, etc. Legacy. Today, Zanabazar is viewed as one of Mongolia's most prominent historical figures, celebrated for propagating Tibetan Buddhism throughout Mongolia while reshaping it to fit in Mongolian sensibilities, thereby establishing for the Mongols a unique cultural identity. His artistic works are generally regarded as the apogee of Mongolian aesthetic development and spurred among Mongols a cultural renaissance in the late 17th century. Even during the country's socialist era he was acknowledged to be as a prominent scholar and recognized for his artistic and cultural achievements. As a political personality, however, socialist authorities portrayed Zanabazar as a traitor and deceiver of the masses, responsible for the loss of Mongolian sovereignty to the Manchu. In the post-socialist era, however, there has been a re-evaluation of his image to where his actions in negotiating the Khalkha's submission to the king are considered to have been in the long-term interests of Mongolia, and he is generally exonerated for his role in 1691. In 1965, the Zanabazar Museum of Fine Arts was established in Ulaanbaatar, containing the largest collection of his works. Zanabazar Buddhist University was founded in 1970 in Ulaanbaatar, and a major street, Öndör Gegeen Zanabazar, is located in the center of the capital. In 2009, a genus of dinosaurs, Zanabazar, the remains of which were discovered in Mongolia, was named after him.